Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for February 21, 2024. February 21 marks the 137th day since October 7, which means 137 days the hostages have remained in captivity. This is 3.5 months. It's a full financial quarter plus some. It's a semester in many schools. It's a monumental amount of time for a child or an infant. It's an eternity for someone missing their medications. It is a hell with no bounds for a man or woman enduring sexual, physical, and psychological abuse by the hands of their evil captors. Bring them home now. Let's keep a few things in mind. Civilian hostage-taking is a war crime. The Red Cross has not been able to visit with, check on, or get medication to the hostages, all while Hamas rejects proposed plans for a ceasefire, with the only condition being the hostages being returned, including the bodies of the dead. Keep in mind that recent footage shows Hamas operatives shooting children and other civilians for accessing the aid being trucked into Gaza, specifically for civilians. And the footage of Hamas shooting civilians trying to flee the areas that the IDF has warned by a text message, leaflets, and phone calls that it would soon be attacked in order to root out the terrorists and recapture their hostages. Keep in mind that Hamas is keeping civilians and hostages as shields in hospitals, schools, and private residences to protect themselves and have fodder for a biased press when Israel does make a maneuver. Last week, 2 hostages in Rafah were rescued by the IDF in an operation. Keep in mind the President of the United States, Biden, and others discouraged from Israel from even taking any action in Rafah. Israel is being accused of war crimes when Hamas is committing the war crimes and the IDF is doing its best to maneuver around them, including when the IDF moved in on a hospital, finding terrorist combatants dressed in medical garb. The IDF was first accused of a war crime for infiltrating a medical facility, but it was the medical facility that was a ruse, and the uniformed medical personnel were actually the terrorists. Let's also take note that Israel's current operations have the lowest civilian casualty rate on record as recorded by modern military historians. The U.S. has not come close to this rate in protecting civilians during wartime, especially urban warfare, not Afghanistan, Iraq, or anywhere else. Let's not mention the Islamic countries' civilian casualties in their wars with each other. When you see images of Gaza cities leveled, look at Dresden, Germany, or other occupied cities in the aftermath of World War II. Remind yourselves when you watch the news and reports of so-called civilian deaths that are reported. Ask yourself who's actually giving the source of these numbers. Those deceitful devils that ordered children burned in their beds, women raped, elderly beaten and burned, they will all lie and repeat it over and over again until you believe it, just like Hitler instructed. The spirit of Amalek emerges every century with no new tricks, just new technology. Oh, and let's not forget the UNRWA employees who participated and aided in October 7, and the Gaza hospital workers colluding with the terrorists, all on camera and documented by the IDF. So the next time you see protests in the West, riots in the streets and in front of children's hospitals, on highway off-ramps, in libraries or schools, all calling for free Palestine, ceasefire, and from the river to the sea, ask yourself the following. Free Palestine from what or whom? Who was supposed to cease fire? What about the 134 civilian hostages who, if not dead, are being abused in unspeakable ways every day? What is a war crime and who's committing it? And from what sea and to what river do you want to be free? What about the people that are already there? And what government or leadership would emerge as a result? Israel is facing yet another iteration of Amalek. This history is clear and it keeps repeating itself. This time, however, without the Amalek spirit only manifesting in Israel, it is surrounding the whole world. In Europe, North America, Australia, everywhere. And as Chaim Ben-Torah noted, even today, our modern Amaleks, Hamas, are being used as an enemy to cast doubt over the right of Israel to defend itself, doubt over Israel's desire for peace, doubt over the sincerity of Israel to create a Palestinian nation. God wants us not to forget the deeds of Amalek, which Hamas and other ISIS groups imitate without hesitation or shame. Deuteronomy 25:17 tells us, "Remember what Amalek did unto thee, and by the way, as you came forth out of Egypt." God's glory and His will and His word are all immutable and will come to pass with or without us as Christians. It is our duty to participate in God's plans, pray for His people and His will, and act in ways that support His decrees. Indifference and silence is complicity with God's enemy. Just as the Israelites were given a choice to choose life or death, We need to choose life, and that means fighting on the side of life, of Israel, and against death, that is Hamas and its partner terrorist regime acting under the spirit of Amalek. Use your voice, your email, your pen, and your prayers to advocate for Israel, the Jewish people globally and within your community, and demand the return of the hostages, and counter the false narratives that we see infesting our schools, our universities, our political leaders, and our media. Donate to the Jerusalem Connection so you can have continued access to neglected and buried news stories, and that you are continually informed, educated, and activated. We cannot do this without you. Shavua Tov, and Am Israel High.
Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am